share with you today about my spiritual awakening after my dad died. And if you've been through a spiritual awakening, you know that it's not a one and done. Once you've woken up to spirit, which can happen many, many times in your life, it will continue to happen because it's a process. It's not like you're like, oh, I'm awake, okay, done. Although some people out there like to, I don't know, try to pull the veil over people's eyes and pretend that's how it's done. They're like, I'm enlightened. But that's not true because nobody is that enlightened until you take your last breath, until you die. We don't get to be that enlightened. We can get glimpses of it, but as long as you're in this human experience, you're going to have this thing called being human in the way of this spiritual enlightenment. So the good thing is we can get some of it, right? We can. And the more awake we are, the more we remember the truth as we're going through this human journey, the more we'll benefit from it. But it's never complete. Nothing has opened me up quite as much as my dad dying. My dad, if you haven't watched this channel before, thank you, by the way, welcome to all my subscribers who've been with me from the very beginning. Thank you so much. You mean a lot to me. And if you're just new here, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. You mean a lot to me. I'm providing this free content because I hope to help somebody. So you do matter, and together we can all embrace this stuff and walk through this human experience, hopefully a little more awakened, in tune with what is really important in this life. So if you don't know, my dad passed away 2 months ago, and it was a blessing because I was there by his side. My sister and I were by his side. My oldest brother didn't want to participate in that way, and that's okay. And then my other brother was on FaceTime. My sister and I were in the end of life unit in surgical ICU in hospice, but it was all very sudden because he had fallen at home. So it's not like he had been in hospice and all of this. So we got to witness his last breath. I was holding his hand. I had to ask him questions, and I said, Dad, squeeze my hand. We played music for him. A lot of really beautiful things were able to take place because we were there with him. We played some of his favorite songs. I said, do you know that Jay, my brother, is here on FaceTime? And I said, squeeze my hand, and he did. And all sorts of amazing things happened because we were there with him. I also got to experience him leaving his body. By the end of this video, I hope that you could have some peace around dying. We don't want to rush the process, right? We're not like trying to bring it in today, but it is something that's going to happen for everybody. So the first thing that I've really come to terms with, and I've thought of this before, and maybe you have too, but just how ephemeral this experience is, meaning it's fleeting. It's a moment in time. Or as the Bible says, we are just but a breath. And that is so true. And yet, a lot of times we're walking through this experience thinking that we're going to have all the time in the world to say how you feel about somebody, all the time in the world to really be who you want to be. And the truth is, that's a lie. I think the danger sometimes with all this, like 10x your body, make your body super ripped, 10x your income, make your income even better, 10x your relationship, on all this like 10x, be better, is that a lot of times it instills this belief that you're not good enough right now. You're not good enough until you get the six-pack abs. You're not good enough until you 10x your business. You're not good enough until you have this huge following on social media. And none of that is true. What if we focused more on 10xing your kindness, 10xing your presence, 10xing your ability to tell the truth? Now you might say, oh, I don't lie. Right, but I'm an acting teacher, and I know that most people are acting in their life. I almost went into psychology, but in acting, you get to discover human behavior through lots of different character types. So I've seen this in my acting studio all the time. People come in because they want to learn how to lie really good, or they want to get away from themselves. And those are two reasons why you should not enter an acting class, at least not mine. Because in my classes, you're going to find out how to tell the truth. You're going to really come to terms with most people are acting in their life. Now, sometimes you have to act, right? Sometimes it's not appropriate when I'm checking out at Target and the guy says, "How you doing?" for me to break down in tears and say my dad died and all this stuff. Sometimes that can happen, and that's just human, right? But a lot of times that's when you act and you say everything's fine when you're falling apart inside. It's not always like this mean thing why you lie. Sometimes it's you're lying because you're scared, but you have to act as if you're not scared. So there's a lot of reasons why we act in life. And then if you want to learn how to actually tell the truth, it's weird for some people to think, but you actually come to an acting class and you're going to not get away from yourself. Even if you play characters, you're going to, in my classes, really get to know yourself. That's another thing that I realized is that I always knew a lot of people were acting, and even in times I've been acting in my life. But the spiritual awakening that is so profound for me right now is to drop the act. Tell people how you feel. If you're really scared that they're going to run away because you love them, then good riddance, really. Because love is what the world needs. I mean, the world needs more love. All is to return to love. And like, what if you're just dating someone? You've been dating for months and you have this great connection and you're scared to tell them how you really feel because you're trying to be cool or whatever. The invitation here is to go all in with your life because you might not get tomorrow. So to drop the act and allow yourself to really be who you are. It's less about 10xing all this stuff and more about really being who you really are. And then all that other stuff will 10x itself if it must, right? If it's meant to, if it's being of service in a way that helps people, it will 10x on its own. But coming from it from this lack position, like I better get the better this and that so I can be validated, is very dangerous. Something else I've realized in this new era of my spiritual awakening, when my dad was holding my hand and literally getting ready to, and then when he did take his last breath, is how many wonderful stories he's shared with me throughout my life and how many things I still wanted to know. How many questions I didn't ask. So in the day-to-day with people that you think you know so well, I've heard that story a million times, it's an invitation to ask a new question, something that you don't know. Never stop getting to know people. They could be a stranger or somebody you've known for your entire life, and there's still an opportunity to get to know them because you don't even know yourself yet either. None of us do. That's the other thing I'm learning is that we don't really know ourselves because each day you're new. I'm exploring. And I've been really hard on myself about a lot of that because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's terrible. It's so embarrassing. But then when I get into my real spirit, I go, what is my intention? Because I'm not who I was yesterday. I'm not who I was a moment ago. Allow yourself to evolve the same way you allow other people to evolve. A lot of times relationships get really unhealthy because they stop getting to know each other. Like you think about somebody you know from high school or something, and they're going to put you in that box from high school because that's who you are to them. Because a lot of times people are not getting to know themselves, so they're not getting to know anybody else. They're just like, that's who you were in one moment, and that's who I'm going to keep you as forever. And so conflict can happen because when you're like, that's not me, and they're like, yes, it is. And then they project all their projections because they're not doing the work of like getting to know themselves. So of course you're whoever they've dictated. So something else that I'm really learning about this is that you are not yesterday's moment. You are only this moment right now. Who do you want to be right now? It doesn't mean that all those moments didn't matter leading up to this one, but allow yourself the freedom to evolve. You can change moment to moment. I respect people who change their opinions. In today's society, often that's shunned. Oh, she changes her opinion. Oh, he changes his opinion. I respect that. Now, I don't respect it when somebody's being, duplicitous and they say one thing to you and then to somebody else they put on the big act and, oh, I don't like her. I never did. Oh, you're wonderful. That is BS. That's acting stuff. Not the good kind, right? That's the acting in life stuff that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about allowing yourself to evolve moment to moment and be present. Something else I learned is that there are a lot of people that have zero awareness of their influence at all on anybody. They don't realize their influence on themselves, so they say negative, bad things. Oh, I better 10x my body. Oh, I ate bad. I'm terrible. I look terrible. So of course they're going to project onto you negative stuff, because that's how a lot of people are moving through this beautiful human experience. So they lack empathy for themselves, because that's a mean thing to say. I would never say to my friend, like, oh, you look terrible. What'd you eat all week? What, were you sick? Something's wrong with you. No, I would go, oh, you're wonderful. You're beautiful. Like, if you want to work out, work out. If you don't, don't. Like, whatever feels healthy in your body. But stop punishing and shaming people, because if you don't have empathy for yourself, you're not going to have empathy for other people. Something else I knew, but it was even more I don't know if justified is the word, but more like apparent, was in the hospital. The doctors and nurses, unfortunately, around my dad had no empathy. They just had no empathy. A couple nurses that weren't even in his room, that were just in the hallway and stuff, they were more empathetic than the nurses that were in his room. We had to keep reminding them to leave the room when they were talking about, okay, do you want him cremated, blah, 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 like going through the business. He was still alive and he could still hear. There's a lot of research that shows that they can hear. They can still hear you. So why would he want to hear about his cremation on his last moments of life? But these doctors and nurses had zero empathy. When I was asking my dad questions, we were there with him for hours, 12 hours a day, and then 7 hours. I mean, we were there with him. And not always was he responding to stuff and doing stuff. I said, Dad, are you in pain? Squeeze my hand if you're in pain. He squeezed. And a little tear came out of his eye. And these were profound moments, because that was the last communication I had with my dad. And one of the nurses, who's like 20 something, with zero empathy or awareness of just reading a room. That's the other thing I realize, is hardly anybody knows how to read behavior. If you really want to learn how to read behavior, also my acting classes can help. That is just the truth. The Meisner technique is the best on reading behavior. Even therapists who've done this for a living, reading behavior business, right, have come into my class and go, whoa, this is something totally different than what I've been doing. I really haven't been present with people. This is eye-opening. But I realize that people aren't present. They have no idea how to read a room. So these doctors and nurses interrupting, saying rude things. And then this nurse, her wisdom of heart was very young, much more immature than a 20-year-old, even more immature than my daughter, who's 7. And she's like, I hate to break it to you, but those were just reflexes. When people are dying, they have reflexes, just like if, a doctor hits your knee and you jerk your leg up. It's a reflex. So your dad squeezing your hand, I know it feels sentimental and everything like that, and I know that was a really big moment, but it was just a reflex. And I'm thinking, if you had enough awareness to know that that was a big moment, and you saw that meant something to us, what difference does it make to you to just leave it alone? Why say that to somebody? Why? So that's not scientifically true, by the way. And second of all, yeah, they can have reflexes, but when they're answering specific questions, no. And you don't know me, you don't know my dad. I know that he was communicating. And second of all, even if that was true, what was the point of that? Like, why? Oh, now is my time to really show no empathy and no ability to read a room. Like, why? What did that serve you? What is your intention with that? So I realized that a lot of people have no intention. Does it make that nurse a terrible, bad person? Yes. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't. It's like she's just a human being on the planet going through the motions like so many do. But now, in the contrast, there's a channel I highly recommend to you if you're interested in learning more about death and dying. It's called Hospice Nurse Julie, and she is amazing. I love her. I love her. I just happened to find her. I wasn't even looking it up before, a week before my dad died, and I saw a video on dying and the gurgling sound that somebody can make in their final stages of death. And thank God I happened to see that video that I wasn't even looking up, because I knew what was happening. Because she told me, a girl on YouTube, she's a nurse, she took the time to make a video, you know, like so many of us are doing, and it helped me, and it's helped a lot of people. She has a big channel. But I can see why, because she has empathy. And she talked about all these things, and so I knew. But the nurses in our care union, they didn't tell us. I wish I had watched some of her videos that I've seen now since my dad has died, because I would have been able to take care of my dad even more. I mean, she mentioned here, if you're dying, or if you ever have somebody dying, she suggests to have ice, and the hospital won't recommend it, so you have to ask them for ice, and you just put it around their lips, because the mouth and lips can get very, very dry because they're not drinking anything. Tell us any of that. But this hospice nurse, Julie, was so empathetic. She suggests playing music and doing all these things. She says that when she dies, she wants The Office to be playing in the back. And like she said, she wants a Diet Coke because you can't taste anything really. So she said Coke and things like that are good when you're dying. But see, these are like simple touches, simple things that can really help when you're experiencing a heightened situation. In acting, as a director, we have something called go with the biggest thing in the room. So as an actor, you want to notice everything that's happening when you're on stage or on camera, but you don't point out every little thing, you know, because otherwise it's like ADHD or something, right? You're like, oh, look, there's a plane. Oh, there's a squirrel. Ah, I know everything that's happening, but I don't need to name everything, because it's not necessarily the biggest thing happening in the room, which means like the biggest moment happening. So if I'm directing a scene and two people are very connected and, you know, listening and reacting and working off one another, that's the most important thing in the scene. You're not going to interrupt that to say, oh, by the way, wear blue shoes. It's not as important. Does that make sense? Let me know if this makes sense. So go with the biggest thing in the room, or the biggest thing in life. What's the most important thing? And not everything can be super important. That's something, a hard lesson I've had to learn in my business, because everyone would come at me with all their problems, and I'm like, everything's important. You can care for everybody, you can care for everything, but everything doesn't have the same level of importance. So even if that nurse thought that was really important to share with us, it wasn't the highest level of importance, because why? What does that serve? You see what I'm saying? So I realize people on a mass scale don't know how to read behavior. I mean, how many times have you been at a restaurant and you've been waiting for the server? And I used to work in the restaurant industry, right? I planned parties and fine dining. Like, I understand the restaurant world. And it's very easy to read the behavior of a table. This is a finesse that is gone in most restaurants, because you could be like waving down at server, like, I need something, and they won't pay attention. They're not paying attention. That's somebody who's not reading the room at all, right? And then you finally take a big bite of something, and then they come over when your mouth is full, and they're like, do you need something? How is everything? You're like, I can't talk now. And then they disappear again for half an hour. It's like, that would be solved so simply, just reading the behavior of the table. Take a moment and just look. If you're a server, just take a moment and see what they're doing. If they just took a big bite, not the time to approach the table. Let them finish their bite and then go over. This might seem like common sense, but common sense is not common. That's the other thing in this spiritual awakening I'm realizing. So if something comes to you and you're like, I have this idea, but everyone goes, no, that's not a good idea. That means it's supposed to come through you. That means you have the awareness of it. Or if you're like, that's so common sense, everyone should have that. Common sense isn't common. So if you have that instinct, you do that. Now, there are some people with hyper awareness, like narcissists, which I've talked a lot about on this channel, who actually prey on and manipulate through reading behavior. They're very good at reading behavior, but they use it to manipulate. They use it for evil instead of for good. So, on top of a lot of really good people being not empathetic, not knowing how to read a room, then we have the narcissist coming in and knowing exactly how to manipulate and read a room. So since my dad died, I also learned that the death industry is terrible. Frustrated because it took us 8 weeks to have Chase Bank release the funds to my stepmom, who was on the account. She was on the account. And what Chase Bank did was totally illegal and not right at all. Attorneys told us what they were doing was wrong. Even bankers at Chase said, oh yeah, this shouldn't be happening. But it was. So if you realize something is happening that it shouldn't, be that person. Be that person that stands up for somebody. If you're the teller at the bank, if you're the banker, if you're the manager and you're like, yeah, this is absolutely wrong. It's not in our policies that your stepmom should be able to write checks from her own account. This is wrong. Don't just sit there blank-eyed and be like, so that's it. It's just wrong. If you're the person who realizes something's wrong within your company, within the business you work for, then you're the person. It took us 6 different banks and multiple people, courthouses, many times to get notarized. I mean, on and on and on to get accomplished what one person did in like 15 minutes. And he was like, this shouldn't have been a problem at all. No, it shouldn't have been. But what I realize is, yes, there's narcissists, there's people who just lack empathy, there's people who have no awareness, and people who think we're going to have millions of this day. So remember, when you're talking to somebody, it could be the last time that person has a conversation with anyone. Is that how you want the conversation to go? Now, I know we all get upset sometimes. I've gotten so upset in the last few weeks. I haven't even been able to make a video because my head has been spinning. And I'm in like, what is my intention? Just to get mad or something? And that's not, never my intention. So in the midst of just being really busy, having the death of my father be like a full-time job, mentally, physically, emotionally, on top of then being so blessed that I get to work one-on-one with coaching clients, and I've been in the theater teaching in-person classes. I've also just been raising my beautiful daughter. So I mean, a lot has been happening, but also I just haven't had the time and energy because I wasn't sure what my intention was. So something that is really clear for me now is I'm doing everything intentionally. I'm sharing this video with you out of intention to help you maybe have some peace around this stuff, to know that a spiritual awakening doesn't always feel good. I've had like ups and downs. I've felt great. When my dad left his body, something I really realized is that we are not this body. I know this is something we hear a lot, but you're not. Your spirit, your soul is making up how you move, how you breathe. When my dad left his body and his spirit left, I could feel it. And hospice nurse Julie accounts for this. Before I saw a video on her about this, I felt this. So, and then she reaffirmed it. So I'm like, this is true. It was very similar to the same feeling of when my daughter was born. The same peace came over the room. When somebody comes into this experience and when somebody leaves, something magical is present. There are spirit, angels, I don't know, whatever you want to think. A lot of hospice nurses also account for them reaching for somebody that they love, like, oh, it's my mom or dad or somebody who's passed on. And neurologists can't say. Some people go, oh, that's just science, and because neurology and your brain is shutting down. No, even all the neurologists, all the scientists, all the doctors, nobody has an answer for it. It's a natural phenomenon that happens enough that it's in medical books and accounted for. So this spiritual awakening that's happening to me is just a deepening of remembering that we're in this experience for a short time. To be here now, to tell people that you love them. I hope these tips help you, and also to play music, to play funny movies, whatever it is that your person enjoyed in life, you can do that for them in death. And then you can also write out what you would like to happen, because it's really hard for people to guesswork, what you want. I mean, it was funny because we were even playing the Music Man, and, hilarious to me. But my dad enjoyed that. So it doesn't always have to be like this really sad, melancholy music. Some of it was. We played a lot of Elton John, and it was very sad. But it was beautiful. What I've learned through death is that it's time to really live, and to also give yourself permission to evolve. I'm not who I was yesterday. You're not who you were yesterday. You are only this moment. You're not the body that you had when you were 2 years old or a teenager. And when you leave this earth, you're not even the body anyway. When my dad was lying there, I realized we really are like a pair of pants that you get to wear for your whole life. So treat it nicely. Treat yourself how you want to treat other people. And if you want to experience more empathy in the world, then the next time you look in the mirror, say nice things to you. Say nice things to other people. Say nice things in the comments here. I love them. I don't need validation, but here's the thing. Anybody also, this is the other thing I learned. Anybody who says, I don't care what anybody thinks, is a liar. We all care what people think in this world. And if you have empathy in your heart, then you should. It doesn't mean, though, that you need validation from everybody. That's something totally different. We've mixed up the two. But caring what people think and feel is a beautiful thing. So I do care about you. And if I said I didn't, I would be a liar. Now, that doesn't mean that every person that jumps on here and tells me I have terrible makeup, or I'm ugly, or I shouldn't be doing this, or other people have whatever. I've gotten mean comments. I'm not saying that, I need to adhere to all of their comments and like that's who I am and that's how I get my validation. What I'm saying is that when I get positive comments and I go, oh, good, I put myself out there and it actually helped somebody. And that feels good to me. It's not like, oh, I'm a better person now because, I don't know, because I got validation. I know some people are going after things that way. But to remember what your intentions are, what your pure heart is, and then go get them, Tiger. I feel like this is like a pep talk, but I hope you found some use in it. I have so much love for you. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you feel like it and you haven't, subscribe,